God permits demons. That statement alone can send a shiver down your spine. But what if I told you the way G.K. Chesterton saw this permission is infinitely more subtle, more personal, and perhaps, as the title says, worse than you think? Forget the pitchforks and fire, the grotesque figures and dramatic temptations for a moment. What if the most dangerous demon isn't an external force besieging your soul, but an internal trap, a labyrinth of your own mind's making that God allows us to wander into? Stay with me, because this will fundamentally change how you perceive the unseen battles within.
Gilbert Keith Chesterton, that titan of thought, wit, and Christian apologetics, possessed a rare insight into the human psyche and its spiritual vulnerabilities. He wasn't preoccupied with the cartoonish devils of folklore. His understanding of evil, of the demonic, was deeply intertwined with his profound grasp of sanity, reason, and the nature of faith itself. He famously penned a line that unlocks this entire terrifying perspective. The madman is not the man who has lost his reason. The madman is the man who has lost everything except his reason. Let that sink in. It's a classic Chestertonian paradox, a verbal key turning in a lock we didn't even know was there. He wasn't diagnosing clinical insanity. He was pointing to a spiritual and intellectual ailment, a chilling form of self-imprisonment that is far more common and far more deceptive than we dare to imagine. Chesterton, in his own formative years, wasn't a stranger to the shadows. He confessed to exploring the darker side of skepticism, dabbling in spiritualism, peering over the edge into the chasm of nihilism. He vividly described this period, saying, "All my mental doors opened outwards into Cocytus, the frozen river of wailing in Dante's Inferno." He felt the icy, desolate wind of a universe stripped of inherent meaning, of divine purpose. And from this harrowing personal journey, he emerged with a stark realization. The human mind, untethered from a larger transcendent truth, can meticulously construct its own very personalized hell, its own most persuasive demon. So, when we consider God permits demons, what specific kind of demon did Chesterton believe God permitted, and why is its operation worse than you think?
It's worse, firstly, because it doesn't look like a demon at all. It wears the mask of enlightenment, of intellectual integrity, of pure, unadulterated logic. Traditional demons, the kind that tempt with overt sin or terrifying apparitions, are often recognizable, even if alluring. You might wrestle with them, but you know you're wrestling. This Chestertonian demon, however, is the demon of isolated reason. It doesn't confront you, it convinces you. It doesn't offer forbidden fruit. It offers what appears to be the unblemished apple of irrefutable truth. It whispers, "You're too intelligent for myths. You're too evolved for mystery. You have the capacity to understand it all on your own terms." It's a siren song to your intellect, your pride. It's worse, secondly, because it's an inside job. This isn't an external entity breaking down your spiritual defenses. It's the corruption and overextension of a God-given gift, your reason. Reason is essential, a tool for understanding God's world. But when reason declares independence from faith, from humility, from wonder, it becomes a tyrant. It builds a cage from within, using the very bars of your own thoughts. And God permits this, perhaps because true freedom, the freedom He cherishes for us, must include the freedom to make catastrophic intellectual errors, to choose the confines of our own understanding over the boundlessness of His. This madman, the one who has lost everything but his reason, constructs a universe that is flawlessly logical, internally consistent, and perfectly explainable within its own self-imposed minuscule boundaries. but it's utterly divorced from the wild, messy, beautiful, terrifying, and ultimately joyous reality of God's creation. His logic becomes a closed loop, a perfect circle, but it's a suffocatingly small one, and he's trapped inside. He can explain love as mere neurochemistry, sacrifice as evolutionary strategy, beauty as subjective cultural conditioning, and faith as a comforting delusion. Everything is neatly categorized, analyzed, and in the process, utterly diminished, sterilized, stripped of its soul, its sacredness, its divinity.
This is the state Chesterton viewed as truly demonic, and it's worse than you think because it offers a counterfeit peace, a false sense of control. The person trapped in this state doesn't feel tormented, they often feel superior, liberated from the shackles of ancient belief. They believe they see the world more clearly than the faithful. They've deconstructed everything, but they've reconstructed nothing beyond the echo chamber of their own mind. It's a clean, well-lit, air-conditioned hell, as Chesterton might have put it. It lacks the obvious horrors of a Dantean inferno, making it far more insidious, far easier to inhabit without realizing one is damned by a shrunken perspective. Furthermore, it's worse because this demon attacks the very capacity for joy and wonder. A world reduced to mere mechanism, to particles and processes, with no overarching narrative or divine artist, is a world leached of its enchantment. The sunset is just light scattering. A heroic act is just gene propagation. This isn't freedom. It's a monochrome existence. Chesterton understood that true joy, the kind that underpins a robust faith, is rooted in gratitude for a world that is a gift, full of meanings that transcend our immediate comprehension. The demon of isolated reason assassinates this joy by explaining away the giver and the gift. And perhaps most terrifyingly, it's worse because it can lead to a profound spiritual atrophy, a hardening of the heart against the possibility of God. If your intellectual framework has no room for the transcendent, you cease to look for it. Your spiritual senses dull. Prayer seems illogical. Worship absurd. The very idea of a personal God becomes an intellectual offense. God permits this slow fading of spiritual awareness, this self-imposed exile from his presence, because he will not force himself upon us. The door to our heart, as another saying goes, has its handle on the inside. This demon convinces us there's nothing on the other side worth opening it for.
Chesterton saw that the healthy mind, the sane mind, the truly Christian mind, is one that courageously embraces paradox. It accepts mystery not as a deficit of knowledge, but as an indicator of a reality larger than ourselves. Faith, in this view, isn't the rejection of reason, it's the coronation of reason, placing it in service to a higher truth. It's like throwing open the shutters in that madman's tiny circular room, allowing the blinding, exhilarating light and the fresh, wild air of God's infinite landscape to flood in. So, when we say God permits demons, in the Chestertonian sense, he is permitting us to confront the profound consequences of our own intellectual hubris, our desire to be the sole architects of our own meaning. He permits the existence of ideologies that are logically coherent yet spiritually desolate. He allows us to build these mental fortresses because the journey out of them, the conscious, often painful choice to seek a truth beyond our own construction, to humble our intellect before his infinite wisdom, is an act of profound spiritual liberation and growth. The permission isn't passive indifference, it's an invitation to a deeper struggle, from which a more resilient and authentic faith can emerge. The demon of narrow reason, then, becomes an unwilling catalyst, pushing us to seek the expansive truth that sets us free. Maybe you're navigating this very landscape right now. Perhaps you feel the allure of a worldview that seems impeccably logical, yet leaves an undeniable ache of emptiness, a sense of coldness, or a growing cynicism in your soul. Maybe you've been rigorously taught, or you've rigorously taught yourself, that faith is the antithesis of reason, that mystery is merely a placeholder for scientific discovery yet to come. You might feel an intense pressure, internal or external, to have a neat, quantifiable answer for every question, to shrink God to fit into the confines of a human-sized box, or to discard him entirely if he resists such confinement. This is the subtle, pervasive influence Chesterton identified and warned against. It's the persistent temptation to believe that what you can perceive, measure, and rationally deduce constitutes the entirety of what is real and true. It's the sophisticated whisper that insists there is nothing more than this. And God, in his mysterious wisdom, permits this whisper, this profound spiritual and intellectual test. He allows us to wrestle, to doubt, to even build these seemingly unassailable fortresses of reason.
But Chesterton's own life, his intellectual odyssey from the brink of despair to a vibrant, joyful, and deeply thoughtful faith, provides us with a powerful compass, the twin virtues of humility and wonder. The humility to acknowledge without shame that human reason, magnificent as it is, has inherent limitations. It cannot be the ultimate measure of all things. And the wonder to joyfully embrace a reality that is infinitely grander, more intricately woven, and more saturated with divine purpose than our intellect alone could ever conceive or construct. It's about choosing to see the divine poetry that dances alongside the logical prose of existence, the inherent magic that infuses the observable mechanics of the universe. The story of Chesterton is a testament to escaping this very sophisticated trap. He turned away from the precipice of nihilism not because it was illogical within its own framework, but because he recognized that a world devoid of God, a world reduced solely to what human reason could prove or disprove, wasn't a larger, freer, more enlightened world. It was, in fact, a terrifyingly small, claustrophobic, and ultimately an insane one. True sanity, he discovered, wasn't found in rejecting mystery, but in embracing the grand, overarching divine narrative that includes God, that celebrates mystery, and yes, that even comprehends the divine permission of our struggle against these subtle, internal demons of thought. This divine permission, therefore, isn't a sign of God's absence or his indifference to our plight. Instead, it can be seen as a profound testament to his respect for our inviolable free will and his deep desire for us to freely choose the larger, more vibrant, and infinitely more loving reality he offers. The demon isn't an alibi for spiritual apathy, but a profound, ongoing challenge. A challenge to think more broadly, to feel more deeply, and to believe more authentically. So I pose this to you today. Have you ever felt the subtle, persuasive pull of this demon of isolated reason that G.K. Chesterton so brilliantly described? Have you experienced moments where your world seemed to shrink, becoming chillingly logical, overly explainable, and yet profoundly, almost achingly unsatisfying? What are the perfectly logical arguments, the self-contained worldviews, or even the intellectual fashions that you find yourself grappling with? Those frameworks that seem to leave no space for God, for inexplicable wonder, for the raw, unquantifiable joys and sorrows that define our shared human experience. And crucially, how do you consciously work to keep that window in your mind open to the larger transcendent reality? What specific practices, readings, forms of prayer, or personal experiences help you to embrace mystery,
to nurture your faith, and to find that joyful balance between reason and revelation in a world that so often demands that we choose between them. Please share your reflections, your struggles, and your insights in the comments section below. This is a deeply personal but universally relevant topic, and learning from each other's journeys, our intellectual battles and spiritual victories can be incredibly empowering and illuminating. Let's foster a conversation about how we navigate this divine permission for struggle and strive for a faith that is both intellectually robust and wonderfully, boundlessly expansive. Thank you for watching, and may you always have the courage to seek the truth that is gloriously larger than your own or anyone's isolated understanding.